Hi, hello, what's up? Welcome back to my booktube channel. Yes, as you can see, I am so unwilling to be on camera that I am literally trying to chameleon myself into the wall behind me. Is it working? So, hi, yes, you join me for my very depressing December wrap-up. We are nearly at the end of January. This is really overdue. Here are the 4 books I read in December. No, I'm not blind, I can count. There is another one, I just can't be bothered to put it here. And I bet you'll never guess what that middle one is. So we are just straight chilling today. You can kind of see my shelves in the background, so it counts. And yeah, I'm going to tell you about the 4 books. There's only 4 books I read in all of December when I had 2 weeks off from work. The only 4 books. Only 4. So the first book I read in December was Lord of Souls by Greg Keyes. This is the second novel in the Elder Scrolls duology. So this book is set in the Elder Scrolls universe, in the same world as the video games like Skyrim and Oblivion and Morrowind. So if you haven't played the games, this book will be of zero interest to you, and it's the second in a series. Basically this book picks up where the last one left off. I don't really want to spoil too much, but it's set about 40 years after the Oblivion Crisis, and it features primarily a lot of weird demonic cooking. It's basically like MasterChef, like Hell's Kitchen, like one of those shows where people compete in a cooking thing, but it's in like a weird demonic realm for the most part. If that interests you, maybe pick up book 1. I wasn't a huge fan of that setting in the first book, and the second book kind of continued that a little bit. I can't tell whether I liked the first book or the second book more. I don't really want to dwell too much on this book. It wasn't like thrilling. I mainly just enjoy the universe that it's in. I'm a big fan of the games, so I just kind of wanted to explore like the other medium that this realm is like published in, printed in. I enjoyed it, but in the end I only gave this a 3 stars, and that was mainly just for, I guess, the fact that I just really like the universe it's set in as opposed to the story. The story was kind of meh, and I figured that the writing in this was actually quite dry and a bit lackluster. I kind of like the matter-of-fact way that it's written sometimes, but then other times it just feels disconnected from the story and the characters and the events, and I wasn't always a huge fan of that. Book number 2, oh my god, I love this one. Spoilers, you have heard me talk about this in like my best books of the year and in like my best characters of the year, and I think also my best covers of the year. I just really like this book. Oh, and it was my favourite world, and that is The Gutter Prayer by Gareth Hanrahan, and oh my god, like we match. So yes, I present to you my twin in book form. So yeah, I have talked about this book already, but I don't care, I'm going to talk about it again. Basically, this book is set in a very weird, grimdark city that is controlled by an alchemist guild and is full of weird creatures like men made out of candle wax and ghouls that eat the flesh of the dead. And outside the walls of the city, in the rest of the world, there is this horrible war raging called the God's War. So there's all this grand scale stuff going on in like the peripheries of the story, but the main narrative follows these 3 thieves. I don't really want to say too much about them. I went into this pretty blind and I kind of like that. So I'll just say the 3 characters you follow are a young ghoul who eats the flesh of the dead, a boy that has contracted a disease that is slowly turning him into stone, and a young girl who is newly arrived in the city. Right from the start they are attempting to pull off a heist that goes a little bit awry, and the ramifications of that sort of just keep spreading and spreading and spreading, and I don't really want to say any more than that because I feel like the less you know going into this, the more blindsided you get by like all the weird stuff that goes on. It reminds me of the sort of grimdark that you get in D&D, where it's a mix of like weird old folklore and theology, but then you've got all this like weird cosmic horror coming into it. It's like, it's a lot. It's a lot. But I really like this, and I feel like Gareth Hanrahan did a really good job of like melding it all together. There feels like so much rich lore and world building to explore in this world, and like we get to see a lot of it, but there just feels like there's so much more. It was the best, most fun, unique feeling. Just, I felt like of all the fantasy worlds I read this year, this one was my favourite. This is my favourite like fictional environment of the past year, and I loved the characters, I loved the story. I was more enamoured with the world and the backstory than the actual events of the book, but I did still really enjoy it. I ended up giving this one a 4.5 overall. The only thing that hampered my enjoyment just a little bit was I wasn't wholly fond of the resolution, or like the ending at this point in the book. And the other thing, and I had to tab this just because I'm just neurotic as hell, this book has a lot of like typos and continuity, spelling errors, grammar errors. It's like spelling errors, grammar errors, that sort of thing, and just like little typos, and occasionally like a line would be repeated twice, or the same words would be like out of order. There was a sentence in this where all the words in the sentence were out of order, and it took me a really long time to read it, and I was like, wait, what? And I kind of overlook that in self-published stuff for the most part, but in a traditionally published book it really draws you out of the story when you're trying to read and get into the rhythm of the narrative, and then reading a sentence where the words are in the wrong order kind of draws you out of that, and then you have to like get it's annoying, and I don't like when there are errors in published books, and this one had a fair few. I'm not gonna like sit and read them out, but I did tab them just for like my own. So if you are someone that really hates stuff like that, this book did surprise me in just how many there were. But if you don't read that closely or that critically, you might manage to overlook those things. Either way, I'd highly recommend this book. I really enjoyed it, and it was one of my favourites of the whole year. I'm like, should I try and balance these like behind me? Oh my god, I can. Okay, book number 3 was one that I said I specifically wanted to read around Christmas time, and that was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Ugh, this one, I have a whole reading vlog of my experiences going back through this. I wanted to film like my first time reaction reading this in over 10 years. It's been a long time, and I have such a like warped rose tinted glasses view of this book. So going back into it, I was just surprised by how very not up to my standard this really is. I will say, I think I will always be a big Harry Potter fan. I really love the series overall, I love the phenomena overall, and I love the films and like all of the weird stuff that's come out of it, except for Cursed Child and Fantastic Beasts. I just pretend that they don't exist. But I would have thought that the place where it all began, where everything started, would have been at least as good as I remember it, but it just wasn't. And again, I'm just twinning with all the books today. I think my main issue with this was just how the story seems very slow, and it's very simplistically written. I assumed that this was written for like a 10-11-year-old audience, given that that's the age of the characters in the book, but it read so much younger to me. I mean, this is a book that focuses on young high schoolers, so I know it's a children's book, but it is a book, the age is high schoolers. It's set in high school. And it really did just read for like much younger children to me. So I don't know if like that hampered the storytelling. Yeah, it just, in short, it wasn't really as good as I remember. I will always have a soft spot for the series overall, but sadly I only rated this individual entry a 2 stars, which is really shocking to me. I thought this could have been at least a 4 stars just because of the nostalgia factor, but unfortunately it just was not to be. I am still going to carry on with this series because I want to figure out where is the point where it actually gets good, and also just because I do really want to reread them, particularly the last books. I'm really looking forward to Goblet of Fire onwards. Fingers crossed anyway, unless I just misremember them all. So yeah, sad to say, a childhood favourite, not holding up. Okay, and finally, the last book that I read in 2019. One that I wish I had read sooner so that I could have put it on like all of my favourites lists. It is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I knew going into this that it was going to be good. I knew that I was going to like it. I knew that so many people have said such good things about this, but still, it was so good. I don't know how to explain how good this was. Just to skip to it, like, I gave this 5 stars. This is only like my my 4th 5-star read of the whole year, not counting rereads. So yeah, the basic story of this book is that there is a man called Locke Lamora, and he is sort of at the head of this very small gang of thieves. He's not like a Robin Hood type character. It's not like steal from the rich and give to the poor. Like, they steal from the rich and they keep it for themselves. And right as we join him, he and his gang are sort of setting up for this very big, very complex heist. It's probably way better to call it a con rather than heist. And that's not so much the story, that's just where we are at the beginning, because this book takes so many twists and turns in its story and opens up so many more like paths of like where the story goes and what the characters end up doing, and it's impossible to try and set you up for that. It goes in directions that you just don't see coming, but it does it in a way that is perfectly logical within like the realm of the book. There are also like flashbacks to Locke's childhood and how he came to be who he is. You'll get like the current day and then like a flashback and then like the current day and then like a flashback, and every time you like go back in time you end up seeing something that either gives you more information or explains like something about what is going on in the present day, or like explains why a character is doing a certain thing or how they learned a certain skill, that sort of thing. Essentially every time you flash back it's always building upon what you know now, and it's done in like a very clever way. It's done in like a very thoughtful way, and I think honestly just my favorite thing about this book was just how well written it is, just how supremely well crafted as a story this is. It is flawless as a story, as a craft, as a piece of writing. It's just, this should be what everyone aspires to in terms of like character motivations and the way the plot twists and turns, but like never out of the blue. There are things that you don't necessarily see coming, there are things that like blindside you, but they are always set up, and I feel like it's very meta in a way, because part of a con is you set up the mark, you give like a light touch, and then you know, you back off, you leave it, and it comes back to hit them later. And Scott Lynch manages to do that with his writing so much. He sets you up so much, leads you in one direction, distracting you with this hand, and then this hand comes in and bitch slaps you across the face and is like, no, 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 this is where the story is going now. And then there's parts of the book later where it's like you forget about stuff, and then it comes back and you're like, oh yeah, that was like a major thing a few chapters ago, and you just forget because it's just like a snowball rolling down a hill, and things just get bigger and more complex and more fun and more amazing. And I just loved every single second of this book. It was so good. It starts off as a bit of a slow read, but like it's never dull at any point, it's never boring at any point. It's just, it like drip feeds you little bits of information about the characters, but like in a way that just feels like you feel like you've earned it when you get to the point where you learn things about them. Not to mention the way the world building is done, the way that like the information is given to you is so well done. Just the story from start to end, it's like the freaking spaghetti junction in the middle. Like it's just, it's mad and I love it. But it's just, as I was reading it, like I knowingly, consciously had such an appreciation for the writing. I was reading it and I was like, this is so good. It wasn't after the fact, it was as I was reading it, I was thinking, do you ever look at something and just think, I will never be this good? Because until today I've read stuff and I've been like, oh yeah, I think I could live up to that. But this is of a level where I'm like, I wish that one day I would have this much skill at crafting such a perfect story, such a perfect plot line, event to event, like reason to reason, character to character, because oh my god, please, this, I gave this 5 stars. Did I say that already? I think I did. This is a 5-star book. This is not necessarily my favourite book of the year, but this is definitely the best written, most well crafted book I think I have ever read. It is, in my opinion, so flawless in its construction that I am just in awe of Scott Lynch's technique, and I am definitely going to be reading the rest of the books in this series so far this year. If you are a writer, if you write anything like fantasy story, this is a superb study in how to write just a fantastically well crafted story, like a fantastic narrative, and also one that's very heavily based in characters. I can't sing this book's praises highly enough. It's just, it's so good. And if you haven't read it yet, just, it's so worth it. So there you go, those were the 4 books that I read in the month of December. I feel like even though I didn't read a lot, I definitely had like a really good reading month in terms of the ratings. Like, yeah, I know Harry Potter was kind of like meh, but like if I do this, then I had a really good reading month. So yes, Lies of Locke Lamora, one of my new favourite books of all time. I feel like it needs its own dedicated video for me to gush about it, but like honestly, if you've read this book, just feel free to gush in the comments below. No spoilers for the next books in the series because I haven't read them yet, but otherwise, like, I need friends who have read this book. So that is it for my like super chill wrap up thing. I don't think you can get much more chill than me, like just sat chilling in my bed. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know it was like really late. So that's it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully I will see you guys in a future video, but until then, peace out, mages.